Hey there, y'all. I'm Bobby. This is Steph. We are Between Two Teeth.
What's
and
up?
we have a very special guest today.
Very special
who
guest.
do we have here, Steph?
This is Dr. Brett Kessler. He is the, now correct me if I'm wrong, ADA 14th District Trustee.
We practiced this beforehand, and I said you were the American Student Dental Association trustee. And I'm like,
wouldn't that be great?
No. Yeah, wouldn't that be
man.
wonderful? We are so happy that you're here
We're
with
tickled
us.
to death. Actually, very excited. This made my kind of week, honestly.
It
I
did.
was like, this
Thanks
is
for
so
having
cool
me.
to have you on.
And he's a mountain man, just came off a mountain
Well,
race. I think.
snowshoeing race, right?
Yeah, I did the final snowshoe race at Beaver Creek today.
So,
And-
what-
Oh my gosh.
I'm just genuinely curious. I know this. I've been snowshoeing once in my life. So is this really
It's
a
a
race
lot of
that
work.
you run through with the snowshoes on?
Yep, they sent us up and down the
man.
mountain and through this was a really cool course. They have 3 races every year, and this course was at the top of the mountain, and there was a lot of untracked paths. So, you are going through deep snow, like shin.
Why?
deep.
Why
Because
do
I
you know there?
can.
Because you
Because
can't.
I-
There
Oh,
you go.
yes, I love
Well,
that.
Steph, what are we talking about today?
I'm okay, yeah, and Bob's gonna keep pushing me forward.
I'm
I'm
gonna
like
keep moving things
fascinated
along.
with all things athletics, so I could
Yes,
talk about
yes,
that
you
race
are.
for probably way too long.
She was a student athlete.
Uh,
Anyways, what are we talking about today?
Well, we're talking about a few different things. One of the things that kind of attracted Bob and I to your story is just kind of this whole authenticity, addiction, wrapped up in recovery, everything like that. So we've got some tick off items here, but we're going to try to make this as organic as possible.
Awesome.
So
I'm
first
an
thing,
open book for you guys. So whenever you guys
oh,
want.
that's
going to
good.
be awesome.
That's
So one of the first things we're talking about today is I am preoccupied right now, for better or for worse, with a value-driven life. And I am in a soul-searching point in my life where I'm trying to figure out what are my values. So could you talk a little bit about your values and maybe kind of your process and teasing out how you figured out your values?
Oh, what a great question. So, I don't know, 1998, 1999, I read the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Love that.
And that was my first exposure to the term core values. And one of the habits, Stephen Covey invites you to, go into the future, and what would you want people to say about you at your funeral? What would your eulogy be? And and then go live that life. And so work backwards. I didn't want somebody to say Brett worked one more day. He died. The day before he died, he was still working. That wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to really live a productive life that was meaningful and had impact on the world. And then from that, it talks about, what are your drivers? What are, things that really speak to you in a core value? And a core value is something you stand for. It's like a magnetic north in your compass that, that sometimes you veer a little bit away. And if you veer too far, then, you start to get uncomfortable and you kind of go back in. And so I had a business coach who was a dear, dear friend of mine named Bob Frazier. I don't know if you've ever met him, from Austin, Texas.
We don't get out much.
Okay. You guys
We just stay in the studio. We stay in the studio
We're just these
all the
humble
time.
Texans.
We work briefly and then back in the studio. But
Yeah,
what'd you
so-
learn from him?
So Bob, and part of, I think this was we did an applied strategic planning with him for our office. And through that time, he kind of wanted us, as like my wife and I and, everyone that's involved in the strategic plan, to kind of tell us your life story. And as I told mine, the rest of the group were picking off core values that they identified in me. That was really amazing. And I didn't know I was living these core values, but I was, they picked them up. And once you learn what your core values are, then you can accelerate on those core values, and your life accelerates forward.
Yes.
And the Covey talks about the most important core value that anyone has is it has to be courage. So you can have the core value of honesty, but if you don't have the courage to act honestly, it's just a word.
Wow.
So how do you deal with fear? Is fear, how does fear play into courage?
Well, courage does not mean the absence of fear. Courage means so you look at, let's identify people in the military, soldiers, veterans, okay? They went to war. They're labeled courageous. I guarantee you there was fear there when they were in their thing. So courage is the act of walking through your fear because you have enough faith to get to the other side, or you have enough faith in your cause to walk through it. And and as a dentist, we like to have predictable outcomes. And so, but when we step out of our comfort
we
zone,
do. We're pretty type A.
Well, whenever I love what you're talking about, courage. I've been trying to put together values, but you're right. Like if you don't have the courage to enact these values, and by the way, it's not easy. It's intimidating sometimes, depending on who's in the room.
But that's why it's good to do it.
Absolutely.
I have very rarely had something that was like super easy and it became like something that was really impactful to my life. Everything that I've done usually involved some element of failure. I learned a whole lot from it, and it made me such a better person.
On the note of courage, so would that mean that how does extrinsic and intrinsic motivation play into courage? What happens when you feed off of the extrinsic affirmations of others?
Oh, we talk about this a lot.
You got to choose your others first of all.
Ooh,
because you can get, I stand alone a lot of times on things, and even though I don't know, I consider myself forward thinking, kind of a disruptor, and and the status quo doesn't always appreciate some of my ideas. And so sometimes I'm alone on that. And so, I try and surround myself with like-minded people to push you forward. And, but mostly it's internal, know who you are, know what you stand for, and act accordingly.
Yes.
I think that's part of our struggle too, looking at external versus internal. One of my favorite quotes is, you're the average of your 5 closest friends. And I was blessed in my own life. And when I went through struggles just from a relationship marriage standpoint, if I didn't have this group it ended up being 4 dentists.
Yeah.
That helped get me through a really, really dark time in my own life. And, pick your friends carefully and the people you choose to spend time with.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, from maybe you guys have just had a little bit more time and experience to kind of get a collection of very, the like-minded people, when you meet people, when you walk in a room. But when you're in your 30s, it's a lot more challenging because people are figuring themselves out. They're starting families. They don't quite know necessarily who they are. And you're just trying to figure out, well, who's going to be, we've
had extra time to make more mistakes.
Oh man.
And learn,
I always want to, I'm always curious as if you classify yourself. I was at an ADA council meeting this weekend, and one of the slides, I'm sure you've seen it already. One of the slides showed the phrase constructive disruptor.
Ooh,
and when I see that, I'm so excited. But
that's
then,
him.
But then
that's you, probably us too. All 3 of us. Maybe are we disruptive?
But then my follow-up question though is, how do you encourage and protect the authenticity in the room? How do you do that?
So everyone who's speaking, I would hope would be authentic, coming from what's in their mind and their heart. But if the ADA, it's pretty clear they have core values, and it's on the wall in that room, and those are our guide points. And so whenever there's an issue, or a new directive, how does it fit into those core values? Is it bringing us in line with those, or is it taking us away from those? If it's taking us away from those, then it's an easy decision.
That's fantastic. Yeah, no, absolutely hear that.
Do you have anything written down around you that's kind of helps you with that? I had my why that was on a Post-it note that was on my mirror in the morning. Do you write things down? Or do you just keep it up top?
No. So I'm not at home, but at my right by my computer desk, I have a vision board with all the things that are important to me. right front and center for me. I
I
have
love vision boards.
a note taking app on my phone that I collect all sorts of really cool quotes and just put it in there. Sometimes I'll just start scrolling through those quotes that are inspiring to me and keeps me going. But so I need an external reminder sometimes to get me on track and in a good space to move forward with things.
Oh, I love that for sure. I'm curious, kind of switching gears now a little bit. I used to run cross country in college, and I definitely kind of had a dip into a very dark time there. And that might not be congruent with what most people think of a college runner. For me, it's cool to see your journey as endurance athletics being what has kind of brought you out of a darker time. And for me, endurance athletics was kind of what brought me into a darker time. Can you talk more about kind of maybe some of the lower spots and how you navigated away from them?
Yeah, so I'll start off by saying I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, and I got sober in October of 1998. Part of my denial as far as my problem was I was doing triathlons, and I kept thinking as I crossed the finish line of this race, alcoholics can't do triathlons. Therefore, I'm not an alcoholic. So it was kind of it was part of my denial story. And once I got sober, I didn't jump right back into athletics. That's for sure. But after a couple of years, actually, it was in Michigan where I got sober. I moved to Colorado a few years later, and that's when I started getting back into endurance endeavors. And I moved to Colorado on purpose. I moved to Colorado to experience the outdoors to the fullest, and I wanted that for my family as well. And all four of my kids are just big into it, and it makes me really happy that we made at least one good decision. And and I started doing triathlons, and I started coaching triathlon and marathon teams. And
wow.
And I was a pretty good athlete in the early 2000s, but I'd go to do these marathons, and I never finished. I never ran a good marathon, the one that I thought I could run.
Nor have I.
I always hit that wall. I always hit that wall.
Is it around mile 20?
Yeah, right around mile 20.
Yeah.
And but and my wife's finally like, why are you? Because I was such a jerk at the finish line. I was pissed, and I didn't get the time I wanted. And she's like, all you do is train. You cart us all over the country to do these stupid events, and you're never happy about it. And I was like, whoa.
I hear you on that. Wow.
Because it was about the goal. And what I recognized, I stopped doing road marathons right then and there, and I started running trails. And we got thousands of miles of trails in Colorado. And I just started just playing in the trails, and I stopped. I took my watch off, and and just ran and ran for the joy of running.
I love what you said there. So many times myself, I get trapped up in the destination versus the journey. That's where actually you've been good. Some of the journeys that we've taken, whether it's the Italy motorcycle ride or out in California, you're just like, let's see where we're going to go.
That's a direct byproduct of being so goals focused to a fault. I feel like I've lived an entire life from the age of 13 to 22. And it's insane. When I was in college, they would do body fat measurements. I weighed under 100 pounds.
They didn't do that with me. They probably should have, but no.
My biggest struggle, like as I unpack, why is my addiction may not be alcohol necessarily, but my addiction has to do more with dopamine and attention.
Well, that's the way it is for so many people. That's the case.
Maybe so. I don't know. I grew up in a family. They are very cool, chilling. I was the oddball. I had to make the A's. I had to, and I'm not bragging. It's a drive. It's something you can't turn off. And if you've run a marathon and trained for it, you know this. It's something I'm not, that everyone says, well, if you run, what are you running away from?
So can you be balanced and do all this athletic activity, or does that take away from
I haven't
balance?
figured it out yet.
Because that's my excuse. I'm like, well, I'm going to try to be balanced, so I'm not going to do that. Because being a college runner like you were, you're trying to be a full-time student. You're a full-time athlete.
Yes. And so my mom was a functioning alcoholic, and it's tough. So I grew up around it. And in my family, there's absolutely a history of addiction. So what I'm trying to figure out is how do you how do you know when to navigate, and, you had your wife start to talk to you about, hey, why are you dragging us all over the country? I mean, do you listen to your friends, yourself? How do you know it's time?
And I guess it comes with experience, and I'm an experiential learner.
Me too.
I did very well in
So
school.
is she. So is she.
I got my grades, whatever, but I can learn something through experience at a much deeper level. And so sometimes I have to experience, really great things, and sometimes I experience some really not so great things you go back to the dopamine addiction, it doesn't feel good when you experience some not so great things. And so, I try and avert my way around that. But, I do a lot of things on a daily basis to get my mind in a good place. And that to me is the root of everything.
That intentionality.
I have a question for you. How do you manage with failure?
Terrible. I haven't figured that one out at all.
Brett,
I don't like it.
How do you deal with failure?
So back when I was your age, Steph, I felt, it was the end of the world. And especially when I hit my bottom in my addiction, because I had gone to treatment a year and a half prior. And I figured if I just go to treatment, I learn all about the addiction. I'd come out of there and I'd be a much better person. And I jumped back into life to the maximum. But I didn't follow the suggestions that they gave me at the treatment center as I left. And then I hit a real bottom after that.
Yeah.
And the first time in my life was true. It was a true failure. And I was full of shame. I was humiliated. But I got around people who had overcome what I was trying to overcome. And they seemed to be happy, they seemed to be sober, and they seemed to be living good lives. And I had to humble myself to listen to them and ask them, come in with an inquisitive mindset. How are you doing it? And how can I incorporate what you're telling me into my life? And
yes,
I don't know, but I'm sure you're the same. But I always go after the smartest person in the room and pick their brains. And how do you do it? And then I've had mentors and coaches my entire life, since I got sober, and it's really allowed me to explore my true why, my true dreams, and my true purpose. And so I have to be in a good mindset to live the life I'm living. And so now when I fail something, it's an educational opportunity. It's not.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just
I usually will. I'll usually tell people, and I tell this to my boys, I'm like, if you are not failing, then I really don't think you're putting yourself out there enough. You have to expect a certain amount of failure. And maybe this is one thing that I do to cope with failure, is just know that, okay, there's an expectation that not everything is going to work. When we talked earlier about being the disruptive, what was the comment?
It's the constructive disruptor.
Constructive disruptor.
Yeah.
I think all three of us on this call are doing various things in different spheres of influences that we have, and we're pushing something that some people are going to pick up, but a lot of people are not going to pick up, and that's challenging.
Yes, I agree with that. One thing, as just as we're talking here, that's coming to mind is when we look at, we've talked about who do you surround yourself with, get mentors, value-driven life, kind of understanding thyself, understanding your own patterns. What happens when your values are at ends with themselves? So, or in opposition almost. So I'm almost someone who, I love that work ethic, that drive. Let's be the best we can be. Let's be creative. Let's try to figure out new ways to do something. But at the same time, I want relationships, and I want to have safety, and I want to make sure that connection is in there.
You want to have it all.
I think I just want these two things, and I think they're at odds, because when I'm at my best competitively, I'm at my worst relationally.
Oh,
how do you balance it?
And you're an excellent competitor.
Sometimes not an excellent relationship person. Yeah. And I try to be. It's not the most straightforward thing.
You know, I ran into that, especially when I did the Ironman in Hawaii in 2018. It was a lifelong goal of mine. You know, I was training, 15 to 22, 23 hours a week, especially at peak. Yeah. I was working. I was not on the board of the ADA yet, so I knew I had, that window of time. But, sometimes when you're going after a big, hairy, audacious goal, you got to put all in for it. And you can't be everything to everyone all the time. And so, I got the grace of everyone around me to go for it. They knew how much it meant to me, and they knew how cool it would be. I raised a ton of money for leukemia research. Awesome. And in my mom's honor, who passed away the year before of leukemia. And so it was, it was just that period of time was, all in on that. And, but I couldn't sustain it, to the level that I was doing it, because it was unsustainable. If I wanted to have a practice, if I wanted to go on the board, if I wanted to have a family, forget it. I couldn't do all that for an extended period of time.
I like what you talked about there as far as sustainability. We did a Harvard Business Review. Yeah. And I forget the title, of course, but it was basic. Well, I don't know. I can't remember the title, but it was basically, okay, go for it and be driven, but you really have to be intentional about recharging yourself.
Right. It's a concept of resilience being about how you recover, not how much you endure.
And if you're going to endure and you're going to push forth something, you really better be intentional.
I love that. One of the cool, another article. So when you run and you do triathlons, sometimes people will look at that and say, well, okay, so you're an individual competitor, but you're not a team player. And that's plus and minus. When I read an article about the sport of rowing or crew.
Oh, that's right.
It was impactful to me because for the first time, there was this sport that there are no standouts. If you have one person rowing too fast, it actually slows down the boat.
Messes everything up.
Yes. And so when I think of that, it was kind of in juxtaposition to any running event that I've ever done before. When I was growing up, you had parents in the parking lot saying, okay, this kid's getting this scholarship. You've got to beat them at practice so you can know how to, beat them in a race.
And every rower, and two of my boys have rowed, each one serves a purpose. And so they are different, but you've got to work in unison or it's a challenge. How do you get people rowing in unison, Brett?
Yeah.
Let us know, because we'd like to write it down, because, I'm on the regulatory state board side of the equation. So I'd really like that information for that.
So first of all, the book, The Boys in the Boat, did you get to read that?
Oh, love it. Yes.
Great book.
Met the author.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I learned a lot about rowing from that, but, everyone's is a piece of the mosaic, and I could go so many directions here with this, but, to be a team, a leader, you have to find people to inspire so they'll follow. Right. Yes. And so sometimes your techniques of how you lead can attract people to you. Sometimes it can detract people from you. And for me, I'm very goal oriented. If I see a goal out there and I think it's really important and impactful and I know it can be done, I try and find ways to make it happen. Sometimes there's a lot of solo work there. Sometimes I have to engage and bring in other other personalities to first of all, tell me if I'm on the right track or not. Two,
Right.
if I'm not, what do we need to do? Three, what can they add to the things that I didn't consider in how I wanted to do there? So, but so I have a horrible sense of direction, and I'm known as around my family, they know I'm a visionary leader with a horrible sense of direction. Don't follow Brett, but I have great visions of things, so I need people to fill in to fill in the action plans, and I surround myself with amazing people, and then part of being a leader is knowing when to listen, and how can you contribute to their vision and their goals, and that's what a true team is. There was I love books. There was a book by John Wooden that was about mentorship. And the first 7 chapters were essays that he wrote about people that mentored him. John Wooden, the legendary basketball coach from UCLA.
Oh, cool.
He's known as the best coach ever.
Oh, wow.
And I played basketball growing up. The second 7 essays were about people that he mentored. They wrote the essays describing how his mentorship enabled them to live these amazing lives. And, and as I was reading this, I was thinking, I wonder what happened to my basketball coach in high school. He everything he was teaching me, I'm doing right now as the leader of my dental practice. Focus on the fundamentals. Be disciplined. Show up every day. Show up as your best self every day. Your team can add to you to the vision. 1 + 1 is 5. It's not 2. And so I got the idea. I'm going to call him up. Yes. And I moved halfway across the country. I didn't know where he was. He had retired. I knew that. And so I found him on Google, and he was like writing articles for some obscure basketball coaches site. So now he was a coach's coach. And, they had to contact us for him. And I typed my name in, Coach Sartini, within 10 minutes, he and I were on the phone. And
That's awesome.
It was unbelievable. So cool. And so the next time I was in Chicago a few weeks later, I asked if I could take him to dinner, and I took him to dinner. Yeah. And we got caught up. It was 30 some years since we'd seen each other. And I told him everything about my life. He told me everything about his. And what was really cool, he told me about all the mistakes he made when he was coaching me. And it was, wait a minute, and here I am.
How impactful was that to you?
Oh man, it was unbelievable. And I have a son who at that time was, just getting into, he's a very good baseball player, very good basketball player, very good soccer player. And, and I purposely wouldn't coach his teams because I'm so darn competitive, and I'm so darn, yes. I want the fundamentals, and not, I want passing, I want, picks and rolls and form and all this stuff. And,
the basics.
It would drive me crazy if I coached him. Yeah. So he helped me coach my son as a dad.
Wow.
In sports,
that's pretty cool. And that's the beautiful thing about mentorship.
So and a couple things on that stood out from your story, actually several. One of the things when we talk about, I know we're not going to solve membership with organized dentistry on this call. However, when you're talking about mentorship, just one piece of the puzzle, could it be maybe a failure of mentorship to the younger generation as far as discussing how important organized dentistry is?
Well,
big time.
Is that really, I think everyone agrees with that there's a challenge there.
Well, but if it's truly a lack of mentorship, and I say that very carefully because I'm not trying to point fingers, but one of the cool things, the reason I'm in organized dentistry is because I had cool people who were in organized dentistry show up, like literally hand holding on lobby day. And I had mentors help me.
So have we failed? I know when we talk about the generation gap, and I think that's the big buzz of how do we reach out to different generations? Have we failed you? Is that what I hear you say?
I say that very carefully. I don't want to be pointing elbows or pointing fingers, but it was a thought as you were telling your story. And I don't want to go too much into that because I know it's a very complicated
Well,
equation.
it's complicated, but that's one of the biggest issues, I think, at the American Dental Association. And they're trying to encourage mentorship. This is one of the blessings, I think, with social media, is that you get members and non-members who are on social media, and you're trying to push a message. You want to say, hey, here's the value. This is what's being done at Lobby Day. Here's some of the Massachusetts bills, but also we're having fun. Like when we go to SmileCon, we had an absolute blast last year. I know we didn't quite make the morning run. I think you had promised Brett that you were going to.
You would have crushed me. There was too much going on at that point.
We showed up late for the run. I got like a T-shirt that, you're supposed to run the race to get the T-shirt.
I feel like a failure at life.
I stole it.
I did not show up for that.
Yes, I'll be there. We got off track there. So that was a bit of a rant.
Did you have anything? I want to make sure I give you all
unpack any of that. Yeah,
we threw a lot of stuff. Any thoughts
we'll sit back
on
and we'll
that?
Listen.
So you guys were definitely missed, but it just wasn't our time. We'll run again next time. It'll be fine.
It will.
Perfect. Yeah,
we'll get it done. That's cool.
No, we're gonna let him talk.
Oh yes, please. I've got another thing on your story that I love.
So what do we do? I'm hearing
Membership.
We need to do a better job. We have to be better mentors.
Well, think about when you were in your first couple of years of practice as a dentist. Why did you join? Me personally, my first boss told me that if we are to remain a profession, everybody has to do something to contribute to that profession. And at very least, you have to be a member of the ADA. And I feel so strongly about that. I'm going to pay for your membership as an associate in my practice. I'm like, okay, cool.
That's awesome.
I wasn't active. I was nothing. Okay. In dental school, I made fun of the ASDA folks. Sorry, ASDA folks.
Listen, I was ASDA president. Brett, how do I end this?
Yeah.
On that note, where's the stop button?
We'll turn down his volume
until this and then he had to say that. Okay. And look at you now.
But it wasn't a value to me. It really, I was different, and my head wasn't all straight. I was just getting good grades and I was fighting an addiction. Okay. ASDA was like, you people do that. I'm okay. I'm doing my stuff. But it wasn't important to me until, for me, when I sought help for the first time, I called Organized Dentistry and they picked up the phone and they directed me to help. That's where I got involved. Okay. And then
so cool.
when I went to treatment at the advice of the Michigan well-being program, and then I moved to Colorado, I had to answer those questions. And this, Bob and I are working on this, did you ever, were you ever, should you ever, who, all that. And I had to answer yes. And I got in trouble. I got put on probation and I didn't know I was getting in trouble. I thought I was just, why did I get in trouble? Because I sought help. And when we were just about to embark upon a sunset review where we update the Dental Practice Act every 10 years. And one of the things in the Dental Practice Act is if you were ever on probation, you could never be a state board member. I'm like, that sucks, And so how do I fix that? I join Organized Dentistry. I join a work group that's dealing with sunset review. And I was going back to core values, courage. I courageously talked about my story and I said, I don't know if I'm a bad person or, I made mistakes, but all I did was answer these questions because I wanted to get help. And now I can never be eligible, but my brain isn't what it was when I was in my active addiction. It's much different now. And why would I
Were you successful?
No.
Did you get it changed?
No, we didn't. And
that's my cylinder of excellence, or some people call it silos.
No, but this is what we're working on right now, Bob. You and I are working on this. It wasn't our time. So now it is. And I think we got great traction and we'll be able to do it. But back then, 25 years ago, no one was talking about recovery. And, and for me, in my, self-exploration, why would I be quiet about the best thing that ever happened to me? There's people that are suffering in silence. I'm going to recover out loud. So someone could say, well, Brett did it. Maybe I can do it too. And I get calls all the time.
And that's the important thing about getting messages out there.
Yeah. I mean, that's the most attractive thing to your story is even though someone may not have hit that rock bottom, but they can see patterns in their life. They can see your story and man, you're impacting so many people with your message. I'm one of them. Yeah. Like it is so cool to me. because you can help especially younger people who haven't quite maybe gone down certain addiction roads, but they can see the patterns and they know that even if like they have a family risk of it, they're just as high risk as anyone who's gone down. They just maybe not have gone down the road yet. So seeing your recovery, it is an inspiration. I love it.
Well, thank you.
And by connecting in ways like this, that you get different people who are in these, I call them silos. Steph at Harvard Surgical Leadership Program learned, what's it called instead of silo? What's the nice term?
Cylinder of excellence.
Cylinder of excellence.
Yes.
You know, my goal is to build bridges to different cylinders of excellence. And I think when we can connect, you know, like the three of us with the things that we can do, I think we're actually going to all be doing something in Chicago with the Wellness Summit.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see what happens. But that's the beautiful thing about connection and just hearing people's stories.
So going back to your story with your basketball coach,
I don't like basketball.
I also liked.
I don't like it at all.
That's crazy.
I used to be really
tall.
short.
That's
I've never played a game of basketball in my life. I play hockey. Sorry,
That's
I digress.
Cool,
Hockey's great too.
Hockey's great too. I what is it? Knocking on the door. I have reached out to coaches from the past, and I didn't get a chance to meet up with them necessarily, but I've shared some things on social media with them, and it is the best thing for them, for the athlete, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, I enjoyed a little higher level. I wasn't professional by any means, but the level doesn't matter. It's just that you reached out and you had an authentic conversation. And that where there was so much healing with that, especially old coaches that you're just, man, maybe it worked out. Maybe there are some things unsaid, but knocking on the door takes courage. And you're putting yourself on the line for a fear of rejection.
You know, he wasn't in my life anyway, so I really had nothing to lose. But I wanted to tell him how important how much of an impact he had on me back then that I didn't recognize as a, you know, pretty petulant teenager.
I wrote 3 letters to my high school teachers about 10 years ago. I just said, I'm going to write 3 letters to my high school and actually 1 grade school teacher that was impactful to me. Just writing it. Actually, there was just something I read on Harvard Business Review, I think, about when you write a handwritten thank you note, it actually does so many good things for the writer and the righty, I don't know, who's ever receiving the message. And one of the things, receiver, very good. One of the things that the writer often worries about is how is it going to be received by the receiver? That kind of blew my mind. I think, you know, putting a message out there and telling people that they're impactful to you, there's value in that. And I want to pivot. Go ahead.
I gotta talk about that.
Sometimes I forget the thought.
No, it's okay.
But you
write
go.
It down.
Write it down.
All right.
When we do stuff like that and we put it out in the world and express gratitude, you know, 990 times out of 1,000, we're going to get a decent response. But our job is to write the letter. Our job is to communicate it. Our job is not to express how they're going or figure out how they're going to receive it. Okay. We're not going to write
that's on them.
Ending. We're not going to write the ending. We're just going to write our thoughts and our side, and how they connect with it is personal to them. But that's not the point. You know, the point is, I didn't do it to make him feel good about himself. I did it to thank him for the lessons, to show him that the lessons that he imparted upon me were still, I was still using them unconsciously until it became very conscious that it was exactly part of being a team, you know, and that's what he taught me.
I really like that component of, you know, and that's kind of what we do. If you have a message, if there's something that you need to put out there or say, that's your truth. And then you're not really responsible for how people are going to interpret that. When you show up at the state boards and the legislature and say, hey, if someone has an addiction problem, that shouldn't mean they shouldn't be on the board. Those are people we need on the board to represent a point of view.
Right.
Are you trying to stop me there?
Well, no. But I like what you're saying. But here's the difference. It shouldn't matter how people receive it. But we're starting to veer off into this. Are you effective or are you ineffective?
So
and that kind of depends on
it all depends on your goal.
One of the greatest things.
Yes, it may not be gratitude at that point.
one of my favorite professors, I did a public policy fellowship at Harvard Kennedy School, and he talked about that effectiveness. You can frankly, you can be the smartest person in the room, but if you're not effective, does that matter? And he's also a professor that talked about people can have the right words they say, the lyrics, but they don't have the melody. Mm-hmm. And people know how you make them feel. And a lot of times it's how you say things, how you do things. The question I was going to get at was rejection. And we're kind of talking about rejection issues.
Right.
Brett, how do you do with rejection?
It's tough. No one likes to be rejected.
I do. Time. I actually like to be rejected sometimes.
You actually lean into it. It's odd.
I do. I lean into rejection.
Yeah.
So, but it comes back to core values. Know who you are. Know what you stand for. Just like when we didn't run together, obviously it's been on your mind because you brought it up. It hasn't been on mine.
It was
I bug her about it all the time. I'm like, we've got a, I got a free t-shirt.
So I could have taken that as, wow, they don't like me. That's why they didn't come. Or, wow, and what are they up to? So, it just wasn't our time. And, we're not going to connect with everyone on a way that I think we should connect, and that's part of just being human. We all have these like little movies going on in our head of the way the world should be. And sometimes they intersect, sometimes they don't. So
you've got such a healthy, balanced way of looking at it.
So
I'm hoping I can get there.
How do you deal with rejection?
Terrible. It hurts. It absolutely hurts. I don't know if empath is the right word. I think I'm speaking for myself, not all females, but for me, I feel as though I have a lot more emotion. I think emotional has a negative connotation because people, I think sometimes when they hear emotional, they think either loud outbursts or crying inconsolably. There can be a wide range to what emotional is. And for me, if I do have a lot of emotion, and the example of maybe myself not showing up to a run that you invited me on, that's a great
She's not
example.
A morning person.
So it's a great.
Can you run at noon? Is noon a possibility?
Okay, hold on, pause. I was
like
at 4
3 in the
a.m.
afternoon
for years to run.
All right.
So I can get it.
College running
but
did
here's the deal.
wear
here's
you
the
out.
Deal. So for me, you have a healthy way of looking at it. And because you have a healthy way of looking at it, we still have a relationship. For me, what I have to get better at is if you had rejected me on my run.
She goes, I'm done.
Oh my God.
He doesn't like me.
My world is crumbling. Like, what did I say? Yeah.
Yeah. But, and I don't want to portray myself as I get hurt. Trust me. Yeah. I get rejected and I feel very deeply things. And a lot of times I do think way too much. And stuff, but I can't sit in it. Okay. Yeah. And it's part of my, my recovery. They talk about resentments and addiction is one of the biggest drivers for relapse. And, in resentments, you can look at the root of the word resentment, sentir, to feel, refeel. Okay. So your resentment is refeel. And, and early on in my recovery, my brain wasn't all firing on all cylinders, and I had to, build some new pathways. And this is, you're looking at the result of my work in progress right now. But early on, it was like, I couldn't understand why I still get angry. I thought I dealt with that now, and I can't help the emotions that pop into my head. But what I do with them, I do have control over. And I've learned that through time and experience. And intentionality.
How did you deal? Oh, do you want to go?
No, you go.
Oh, thanks, man. Oh. How did you do?
I don't like emotion. I probably
hate
don't.
Emotion.
I
Bob doesn't suffer from this.
I'm a state board regulator. I have no emotion.
Yeah, Bob doesn't suffer from this. I just I'm human. I don't know where your robot leaders dropped you off from.
I am Chat GPT. Not smart.
part of the resentment, absolutely. Oh my goodness. I think part of the reason I struggle with relationships the most is that resentment part of it, because I have to figure out how not to sit in that negative emotion. Because you're right. So everyone's got their different lives, different spheres of influence. And I guess what it boils down to is just, it almost collects in me as anger. And I don't want to go through life as an angry person, but it's easy to fall into the trap.
I don't envision you as an angry person whatsoever. At
Good.
any point. You know, you keep it inside.
Yes.
You know, but think about all the time you sit stewing and scheming in your anger internally.
Yeah.
All the moments you're cheating out of being in the present.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
Because you're in the past, and in the future, how you're going to get back for something that happened in the past that you can't change in the first place. And so you're cheating yourself out of being present.
That is a fantastic way to look at it. And I want to pivot us into.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, that's what
you
I
hate
do.
talking about emotion.
I hate talking about emotion. I'm done with this emotional stuff.
All right,
no,
where are we pivoting?
So let's talk about wellness. And I actually have a problem with that term just because it is so, in my opinion, it's so overplayed. But I like looking at it as how to live one's best life, and to you know, with what you just said, to not sit with anger and resentment, but to live your best life. If we're in a relationship here, the three of us mentoring each other, and mentoring, what I think we miss a lot of times, you mentor up and down. You know,
Absolutely.
There's a lot of things for you as a newer practitioner can teach us about things that we need to know, and vice versa. So what are some I just said I didn't like the term wellness. What are some living the best life things that we all need to do?
I just wrote an article about this.
Oh, look at
Colorado
that.
Dental Association
Perfect.
published it, and I think the Michigan Dental Association is going to republish it. And because I've been wondering about that too, because everybody has their own definition of wellness, happiness. What does it mean? Is it financial? Is it the house you live in? Is it an inside job? Is it outside things? You know, and everybody, you know, has their own definition of it. And so my take on this is my take. Okay. So I look at physical, and you guys know me as an athlete, whatever. And I'm not fast. I could just go far. Okay. And if you see, you know,
I'm not fast and I can't go far.
So, but physical, you know, it's really important. If you're not, like, let's say you're in pain, constant pain, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be fun to be around. And so, you know, so physically, or if you're sick or constantly in the hospital, those kind of things, it's not, you know, that's physical. Your body is, you know, your biggest asset. You got to take care of it as such.
It is. And as a profession, what we do is very difficult. Ergonomically.
And I'm wanting Brett to finish his thought.
No, I know, but it's just like appropriate interaction. So yes, as dentists, we are ergonomically terrible. You know, I'm turning like this all the time. I know we had talked to Dr. George Shepley about the same sort of thing. He said that yoga saved his dental career.
Yoga for
so totally get that. All right,
so
physical.
So somehow we have to be, you know, physically in good standing. Okay, and not only that, you know, what do we put in our body? Okay, what's our nutrition?
Yeah.
You know, 90% of the serotonin released in your body comes from your gut. And if you have a bad diet, you're not going to get that happy neurotransmitter being secreted. And so it's really important. I learned that from my friend Uchi Odiatu. If you ever get a chance to interview him, get him on this podcast. He's the best. Uchi.
Can you spell that at one
point?
No,
you'll have to email that. Okay. That is the coolest name
really
I've ever heard in my entire life.
He is the coolest guy, most impactful to me around this stuff.
Wow,
and you
that's
need
a big
to
deal.
eat more phytonutrients. I'd hate throwing shade.
Is my diet
perfect?
But no, you know, it was for so many years.
We both
so
have
I'm
done.
Relapse.
Listen, we've both done an integrative
so
medicine fellowship.
Good.
Here's the deal.
Great.
I'm gonna lay this on the table here. So for me, my truth, if I can use that correctly, my truth is that I was literally, I would be told by coaches the phrase "fat don't fly." So if I wanted to get faster, I had to shed 2 pounds. I had to shed 5 pounds. and it'd be over summer, it'd be with a club coach, whatever. And so you get to a point where what nutrition? You just can't eat anything.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you do that for so long and you deny yourself for so many years that finally, to almost overcome that, the mental strife that impacts, and it doesn't impact you for a minute, it impacts you for years, by the way, is to kind of, I'm in this point, this is just what I'm telling myself because I don't eat very healthy.
It's called justification.
But I'm in this point where I'm just like, okay, I am going to not deny a lot of stuff. But we did do the integrative medicine fellowship. I agree 100% what you're saying with the serotonin. One of the trustees that was at our council dinner, Craig Harry, he was actually encouraging me to eat more phytonutrients at dinner. Wow. And so I hear you guys. It's happening. It's just going to happen slowly.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
health
in time. So
exercise
in the physical,
intake.
and you don't have to be doing Ironmans to be physically fit. If you do something every day to move, whether it's stretching, whether it's get your heart rate up, and dentistry is not that. Okay. That's hard on you. Do something that's positive. Do 10 push-ups, something,
nice.
Something that makes your body, feel that you're alive. Okay. Second part of wellness, is mental wellness. Okay. And, so, we talk about, mental wellness does not mean I'm happy all the time. Mental wellness means, that I grow my emotional intelligence so I can identify what I'm feeling in the moment. And I can also feel empathically what my partner is feeling, or anyone I'm in a relationship, what are they feeling, and how can I best be in a relationship with them? Okay. So there's many ways we can go with that.
Are you saying empathy or?
Yeah, no, I mean, so, if I can be in a good mental state, but if you're not in a good mental state and we are trying to be friends here, and I just continue being in my great mental state and I totally ignore yours, there's a problem there. There's a big disconnect. Right.
Very cool.
And so we want to, and so if we can identify the emotions we're feeling at the time, and then, like I said before, what do we do with those emotions? What do we do with those thoughts is what's really important. Emotional wellness, as we just talked about, is try and do things to, people show up at dead end jobs every day, and we've all had employees. We've been employees in dead end jobs, and I was in a partnership that was not going well early on in my career, and when I signed on the dotted line, I knew I made a mistake. And, and I ended up a year later selling back the partnership, and I probably lost $250,000 on that deal. But I was able to sleep again at night, and, which was way more important to me.
I used to think money brings a person happiness.
I know plenty of very rich people who are not very happy. I know plenty of, I'm sure you've done mission trips. You ever go?
We've done a lot of mission trips.
So I did one in Guatemala a couple of years ago, and they're so poor, the kids, but they're so happy.
Yeah, that's where we met. It was a Guatemala mission trip.
Yes, and I reflect that, or the happiness, and they don't have a lot at all, but they're so happy.
Yeah,
right.
It's envious.
Yeah. And then also growing your mental capacity, keep growing, keep learning, read books, listen to podcasts, create great podcasts, create great conversations like you're doing.
We should try to create a great podcast.
We'll start tomorrow.
Yeah,
we're going to start tomorrow.
We're just kind of fumbling along here a little
bit.
The
plan is there is no plan.
Technically, it's a YouTube channel, but I digress.
So, and those kind of things. And then spiritual wellness, what is that? Yeah. For some people, it's religion. Some people, it's just trying to be with nature. Sometimes, just trying to figure out the meaning of life. And, in my path, I have a really, I just feel there's something out there that's just kind of patting me along, and the shenanigans I pulled early on in my life, and especially with my addiction, there's no real logical reason I'm alive here, let alone had any of the opportunities that I've been blessed to have. So I feel there's something out there. I don't know what it is, but I try and connect with that. I feel like through my self-exploration, I learned about myself, and I learned what my purpose is. And now my role is to share that purpose. And that's why I'm still
Brett,
here.
What I would say is what I think about as you talk about that, and to pause it a touch, I always try to look at what is the universe trying to tell me, and what is the positive that I can take out of whatever happens. If you did not go through the trials that you went through, we wouldn't be having this conversation today, frankly. Right. And you wouldn't be able to have the impact on people. I know we've had people in our YouTube audience have said they were going through the isolation of chemotherapy. They weren't connected to people. They didn't have their group of people like I had or y'all had. And she said, watching your YouTube channel helped keep me going forward.
Keep me going forward through the darkest time with my cancer
and so you never know what you do, for you.
Continue. Sorry.
Oh no, you go ahead.
I hate cutting you off.
Oh, she doesn't at all. I'm good. It is her favorite pastime. But for you to be able to share your story, for you to be able to show up to legislatures and with state board and through the ADA council work, here, you can say you've lived it, and you can say, here's where I was. This is what helped me recover. This is what frankly didn't help me. This is what I needed, and this is what I got. But let's do better.
I love that.
Oh, thanks.
You mentioned Guatemala earlier. One of the most impactful things about Guatemala for me were the dental students who were testifying. And I was I had just gotten out of dental school or residency. I was in my last year of residency. And when you're a resident, you're technically a dentist. So you're supposed to be a leader there, and you're not a dental student anymore. And these dental students brought so much more leadership than I could ever bring at that Guatemala trip because of their testimony, because none of them were perfect. But guess what? They were still going to be dentists. And it was the first time in my life that I realized you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have this perfect resume. And you can actually achieve anything you want in life, despite, honestly, any dip. Anything that happened or anything that you had, any challenge.
Almost because of that.
You're almost more likely to because of it, which was so cool.
And Guatemala hit you at a critical time, I think, where you're getting ready to graduate. So and, I think it helped focus you, and you've become someone at Mission of Mercies through Texas.
I love Mission of Mercies.
You're there all the time. I just show up and smile and take pictures.
That's a very true story.
And I treat some people.
You treat the dental students who need a mentor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And it is fun. Maybe that's part of the messaging.
Anyway, so that's okay. Yeah, you're right. Yes.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to do stuff
that's
like
why
that.
I like your story.
So I'm gonna share with you. So first of all, I put things up on social media. I used to put it up to garner likes and comments and stuff, and I do a lot of journaling and meditation and stuff like that. So if I'm putting something up on social media, it's usually an extension of a journal that I would like to share, and I'd like to remember. If you see a picture of me, on top of a mountain, very personally, I'm feeling some amazing gratitude at that point, and I put it up there. And the coolest thing about social media is that every year you get a memory pop up, and so it's like a journal for me, and I get to be reminded of what I was doing at that time. And but you never know who sees it, and you never know what they got out of it. So I'm going to tell you, when you guys took your trip to Italy, okay, and documented it. Okay, I had a motorcycle when I was in college, and it was a piece of crap. I bought it for $100, and
Cool.
But I've been obsessed with that motorcycle since I read a book by a musician, Neil Peart, who toured the world on his motorcycles, and I'm like, I keep looking
That's
at
on
it.
my
You
list.
guys are there doing that on the exact motorcycle that I've been obsessing about, and I'm like, it's such a I don't know if I'll ever do it or ever, but I've explored, how do you ride a motorcycle? How do you get lessons to get one? What do you
keep hanging around with us, you'll do it for sure. We're gonna drag
it's
you
not
along.
necessarily a good thing, but
Yeah.
But the point is, you put it out there and people latch onto it. But you're not putting it out there for them. You're putting it out there for you, because you're having so much amazing emotions at the time. And that's part of the emotional wellness. Feel your emotions to the maximum and share them,
I love that.
And
I love it,
doing.
But I disagree.
You don't know who listens. You don't know what they grab onto.
No.
And
So
when it's time
I
for them to
actually,
hear it.
I
100% authenticity.
So my why, and I hate to get into my why. My why is to push myself and others to fully live, laugh, and love.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of my push, when I do put things out there on social media, it's to push other people. And the Italy thing, we were trying to figure out what can we do that's going to be multifactorial. What are we going to do for pushing the ADA's story of ADA wellness and what you can do? He's literally
he probably wrote the initiative.
He probably came up with that concept.
He's like,
yes,
yeah.
he knows.
I know.
It's like, and it's through the American Dental
like, wow,
Association.
these
That's
young
what ADA
dentists.
stands for, Brett. No, he knows. He's on that. All right, are you done? No, I'm not. And so to push something at the extreme, and if you want to be a disruptor, which gets back to where we started this entire conversation. Yeah, constructive. If you want to be a constructive disruptor, sometimes you really have to push something like that. Because we had that Italy motorcycle adventure, when we show up to SmileCon, the president-elect, Dr. George Shepley, Steph sees him off yonder, and then we have an interaction, and he goes, man, I loved watching your motorcycle journey. And we're just, we're having fun with it. We're trying to
He had to
figure
give
it
up
out.
his motorcycle in the last couple of years. And
I know.
So he's living vicariously through
He did.
you, which
and
we
he
all
showed
were.
things. And so,
man, that's
and
so cool.
I love
That's so
hearing
cool.
that, but it also turned some people off.
Yeah,
I
who
got
cares?
an anonymous letter that I'm probably going to post this thing at some point. We just come back from the motorcycle trip that incentivized someone to write an anonymous letter to me that was not kind. It was very clear, but
It was
not
very
kind.
clear. Renee Brown would say queer.
We just got back from
But not kind.
SmileCon. We're meeting all kinds of people. Steph didn't run with you, of course. That was one of the things that happened.
I feel bad.
But it was like, oh, I'm on top of the world. And I get this letter from Dr. Anonymous. And the first 24 hours, I was hurt.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my. And it took me from cloud 9 to way down here.
Yeah.
And then I looked at it and said, you know what? The universe has given me what I need. And I used several elements from that letter to push me to be my driving force and to say, they told me to dial it back was one of the things and never say the word Harvard. So I say Harvard as much as I possibly can. But to use that as your driving force, and not everyone's going to pick up what you're putting down.
Right.
And that's okay.
And especially if you're a disruptor, whenever a disruption enters into the market, the status quo will dig in. And so that's what you're experiencing. And that's what we're experiencing at the ADA as well. We're trying to go through an entire culture change to make ourselves relevant to every dentist in some fashion, and we've missed that in the last several years. We've tried, and and we've gotten an amazing level of success, but we're still missing the mark because we're losing 1.5% to 2% market share every year. And so we're disrupting, we're trying new things, which we wouldn't even be able to try 3, 4, 5 years ago even. And we're in a cultural shift, especially in leadership, that we're open to trying new things. And it's pretty cool. It's a fun time to be on the board. Not because of the metrics, but because of the things we're doing to try and change those metrics. And that comes back to, the goal. Is it about the goal or is it about the journey? And, coming back to the trail running, it really made me fall in love with running again. It made me fall in love with just experiencing life to the fullest, which you guys are all about. And if I get a good race in it, I'll do all right, you know, and I'll be happy. But if I don't do a good race, well, you know, I spent, you know, usually when I do an Ironman, that all that you'll see is the last 140.6 miles. You didn't see the thousands of yards swimming, hundreds of thousands of yards swimming, thousands of miles riding, the hundreds of miles running that I did, you know, before dawn and stuff like that. But I learned to love it, you know, and so I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and they're not mine either, and that's okay. Namaste. You know, you live you know, you do you, I do me, and if we intersect, that's great. But I'm not gonna, you know, get into it with someone because they didn't appreciate what I posted or what how I feel about that.
That's what I've got to get to.
Yes, you should write that down.
I know.
I'll just keep
I'm gonna
playing
rewatch
this
and go, okay, yeah. When he said, I'm gonna like write that on my piece of paper, put on my mirror, because that's what keeps me up at night. Oh my gosh,
not me.
You're an unemotional refrigerator. Just store packets of emotion everywhere.
Yeah.
No, for me, I'm you mentioned taking the watch off to find the joy in it, going trail running. So important. Mm-hmm. The minute I took my watch off, metaphorically, I just stopped caring about the time. I still needed the metrics. I just found the joy in it. I never started with the joy of running. I started because I could run a mile fast. And a coach said, I want you on the team. And then it just turned into this animal that you couldn't stop. So for the first time in my life, in my 30s, I'm out enjoying a run, but it's so tough to just go at a pace without a coach in your head saying, that's not good enough. You don't even deserve to be out here if you're going that pace. And so, that's the challenge.
Kara Goucher just wrote a book that I assume is going to describe her whole transformation from Olympic athlete to who she is now. You know, she's posting a lot. I'm hearing her on podcasts, and she's amazing transfer. You have to learn from her.
She's
and I bet
phenomenal.
if you called her, she would call you back.
That'd be the coolest thing ever.
She is Steffi Steph. People will doors will open up for Steffi Steph. I'm just riding her coattails pretty much.
You guys are really building.
That's the mentor.
Really
but that's part of the mentoring situation.
It absolutely
Everyone
is.
gets so trapped up, and it's got to be here mentoring there. No, it's just interacting, but you've got to want to keep learning. You've got to want to be open to change when it makes sense to change. One of the things on wellness that we talked about, I actually, as I said, I don't like the term wellness. I'm going to try to change DWAC, the name of the.
What do you got as an alternative, though?
So Bobby? I like flourishing. I like flourishing. Kind of sounds like fluoride, which has, positive and negative connotations there. But flourishing, as far as there's times where you're going to struggle, and that is okay. Having tools in your toolbox, whether it's meditation, whether it's contemplative prayer or some other type of spirituality practice, exercise, eating healthy, being surrounded with friends, getting appropriate sleep, all those things are just so critically important. And I think we beat ourselves up a whole lot in a lot of different ways. And that's unfortunately part of what dentistry is, from, what an ideal prep looks like. You've got state board and examination regulators like me that, put things into certain boxes, and, it just enjoying the journey, doing the best you can, fully appreciating that failure is something that happens in life.
It's beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
It's a
Anything else we want to?
Is there anything left unsaid? I know we've taken your time. You've literally just come off a mountain. Nice. His snowshoes are probably still on his feet.
They're drying out.
They're probably
I don't know the technical. I've only done. Have you been
snowshoeing? Yeah. So I grew up in Canada.
You're from Canada, but
yes, I grew up in Canada.
I've never seen you snowshoe.
Yes, I snowshoed.
I've
crossed. Okay. Have either of you cross country skied?
Absolutely. Love it.
Unintentionally,
okay.
yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't part of the plan. Yeah.
All right. Where were you going with that?
I was just saying, mechanically, I'm just trying to imagine people running
super duper hard. I've had a dog
challenging.
chase me, and I actually fell because the dog kept getting on the back of the snowshoes. Anyways, I digress.
it was a hard race today. It was harder than the other two this year because it was in deep snow. And sometimes when it's packed down, it's a lot easier. It's more like just regular running. But when it's deep snow, you got to lift every foot up. And you're pulling a volume of snow with your foot, on the snowshoe. And it was. I'm going to be tired and sore tomorrow.
but what? Yeah, you are. And he's still laughing.
I know.
Look at that. That's awesome. So what's left unsaid? Is there anything we didn't talk about that we need to talk about? Yes, I'm trying to change the wellness initiative to a different name. Flourish. That does sound kind of bad. Maybe we will have to stick with wellness. But what else? What else do we need to? What's left unsaid?
I got nothing.
This is where I listen.
Yes,
oh, you're ready to listen now.
I do not like listening.
You're ready to listen.
I said that.
It only took
I got something.
Oh,
I got
okay.
something. Back on our human journey here. High achievers, we're all pretty high achievers. We've done some amazing things, and from this internal drive. And I don't. Do you either of you teach at the dental schools you're affiliated with?
I do.
I did in residency, but not anymore.
Part-time adjunct faculty.
It's pretty. I taught for 7 or 8 years at University of Colorado. I taught morphology and occlusion. I also taught at the GPR at Michigan when I was there. What I see with these students is, the dental students today are the smartest of the smart. They're not only are they book smart and they get the good grades and they get their DATs, whatever, but they're smart about their lifestyle because they go into dentistry and not medicine. And so, but they're always at the high end of the curve, the right side of the bell curve. Then they get put into class of their peers who everybody's right there. Now, all of a sudden they're average.
Yeah.
And that's really tough. And we as instructors, I remember our course director, also morphology and occlusion. I don't even know if they teach wax ups anymore, but we had to, we teach them how to do wax ups. And our, my directive from the course director was, if God himself came down and did this wax up on a good day, you'd give him 9 out of 10. And so I'm like, no, I'm not doing that, And so, but we are, breeding that perfectionism in these high achievers. And when they fail, a lot of them don't have the greatest coping mechanisms. And, and that's where resiliency has to come in. You have to fail so you can grow. I learned so much more from any case that I did unsuccessfully than I did that everything went perfectly. And this internal drive that most of us have as a profession comes from the culture that we grew up in, whether it was self-directed by our own desire to achieve, or this external that, you were expected to, and I heard it from you, Steph, with your coach, you ran because you ran fast, and you got accolades for that. It wasn't about the joy. And so now, everyone, did it come from these students? Did they get their A's because they were self-directed towards perfectionism in everything they do? And, or was it external from their parents or their whoever was their significant, influencers in their lives? And, but we have to remember that even a closed margin on the x-ray is still open 50 to 100 microns, and that would drive people crazy if they can see it, if they can, and so we have to get over this perfectionistic mindset. But yes, if I were to go to a dentist, I want to go to a dentist who is the best dentist. Okay. And just as our patients choose us, we would choose that too. And, but we have to have a level of humility that sometimes even our best work doesn't work. Sometimes our best idea doesn't come to fruition. And that's part of the human experience. And, talk about rejection, talk about failure. That's part of the human condition that we have to build resiliency to get through with successful, productive coping mechanisms, humility instead of humiliation.
Yes. Man, you could do a whole podcast on that short little snippet you just talked about with dental students becoming average for the first time in their lives and then failing to have the right coping mechanisms. There's a lot of people in my class that turn to drugs and alcohol shamelessly. It was the norm, not the exception. And I was coming from an experience where in college you couldn't drink. There were no drugs because you can't race very well if you're doing that stuff. But what you can do very well is study.
Right.
And you can also be functioning if you're not doing the athletic part of it. And so you just go into this environment where it is about being as perfect academically and kind of lab skills as possible. But it's also about everybody's coping mechanism just tended to gravitate towards very unhealthy. I don't know one person off the top of my head that really handled it exceptionally well.
Yeah. And I think this certainly gives us opportunities for all these cylinders of excellence to work together.
Yeah.
And when we're
Bridging.
sharing the stage together at the wellness/flourishing conference in Chicago in September, it'll be interesting to see what the discussion is. Part of why we wanted to do this as well is because during our time there, we want to do some interactions with you. I know he's speaking before we're going to be on, at least on the agenda that I've seen so far. But we want to have that kind of interaction to figure out how does ADEA and the schools, how do they interact? How do the regulators like me interact? Organized dentistry. These are issues that we can all find common ground. What's good for the practitioner is good for the patient. What is bad for the practitioner is not good for the patient. Me in the regulatory realm, a lot of times we do things that gives this is my personal opinion, not the official opinion of the State Board of Dentistry, of which I belong. And we have an illusion at times of public safety, but we're not doing what needs to be done. And I'm going to keep disrupting, and I'm going to push things.
I love that.
Go for it.
And I'd love to kind of wrap this up with some gratitude. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I mean, this is absolutely
a big deal.
my week.
Yeah,
and I'm
this is a
going
big
to
deal.
do some changes.
You know what? Maybe you run with him
gonna
next time.
impact.
Maybe you get up and you run.
I am. He's going to lead. Like, he's going to be so much faster than I am because I had
not
to lead
fast.
that
I just
a
could
little
go
bit.
far. You know what?
All
The
right.
cool thing when I go running with people, it's just we get deep conversations in. It's like what we just had. You know,
Yes.
so it's if we're running too fast, we can't have the conversations. You know, if I want to run fast, I'll run by myself. I was going to say thank you for inviting me to this conversation, and you guys are amazing. You really are. And,
Thanks, man.
you know, when you start your new podcast tomorrow, that's a meaningful one. You know,
Yeah, we're gonna try.
Exactly.
We'll have these lessons to work off of.
Well, listen, we appreciate you joining us. This has been
Thank you.
Between Two Teeth, and thank you for joining us. If you like what we're talking about, please hit the subscribe.